Thanks.
Right. So we're at the top of the hour. I just want to let everyone know that this session is recorded. It's going to go into the library. And so if afterwards, if you want to go back and review anything that you've learned or found out about, you can certainly go back. And I encourage you to go back into the library and look up some others that some other owners have done, Dan being one of them, in the art and science of pricing signs. And as I like to tell everyone that, the art is selling the sign, pricing is actually the science. So before we even get moving on, I know Rob Lillicrap is going to be on today with us. He had sent me a note that he was stuck in traffic or got delayed somehow, so he'll be coming on here shortly. If there's anyone that has a project right now that they want to talk about, that at least for who is on here right now, we could discuss how we go about pricing it. That'd be kind of helpful at this time. Do you have something, Dan?
I do. Um, I am a member of a church. The church has got merged with another church, and they sold some land, so they have a pot full of money, big pot full of money, and they want to put an EMC sign in to replace their monument sign.
Good.
The not so good news is that the city of Indianapolis doesn't like EMC signs. So the church is zoned SU1, special use one. Um, Not allowed to put EMC signs on special use one zoning. So I'm working through that. Okay. But they're going through a rebranding, which means they're going to need all new signs, interior and exterior. So I gave them a budgetary number for that. And they want to replace the two monument signs that are on property. But they haven't done any work. They haven't done any branding. They don't know what they want in terms of replacing the monument signs. So I'm trying to work with or find some Sign World preferred partners who will help me understand budgetary costing for a single pole monument sign, for a double pole monument sign, for what other kinds of monument signs are they? So when I start having conversations with the church, I can say, well, we could put a single pole in, and that's about $20. We could put a double pole one in, and that's about $30.
Right.
If you want to add stuff on the top to make it look pretty, you have to add 50 cents or $1. Okay. I don't have any experience at all in putting together the parts and pieces to be successful with the monument sign, because you've got permitting, sign, footing, um, um, engineering drawings, power, all that stuff. And if you miss one of those five, you lose your ass.
That's correct.
So what I'm trying to do is maybe convince George to have a special session on, hey, let's take an example monument sign and walk through everything that we have to do and put a price tag on everything so we think it'll cost X. And then, based on all these assumptions, if the height changes, the cost will change. If the footing changes, the cost will change, so that I can get a better understanding of this is a big project, right?
Okay, so let's start with the most important part, and that is what will your city or county allow? Because in many areas, pole signs and tall monument signs have been banned or been reduced down to a lower level sign
Yep.
because they've I don't know if they think they're unsightly or what the issue is, but
The word
uh,
is hate, George. The word is hate.
all right. So now, if you do have something in place, you're grandfathered in most likely, and you can make some modifications to it. But if you cut that down, an existing pole sign, the most likely uh, uh, you being able to go ahead and replace that is slim to none.
Okay.
So
So
you need to keep that structure in place. Do you have something in place already?
yeah, I have a monument sign that's a single pole monument sign on a probably a 6 or 8 inch Schedule 40 pipe. The total height is 3 cabinets.
Mm-hmm.
Total height's about 25 feet. Um, both of them have light power, meaning enough to light the cabinets. Okay.
Right.
And the pole is skirted with basically 36-inch wide by 18-inch skirting. So you can't see
Yes.
the pole.
Sheet metal. Yeah.
Yeah, something. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Right.
my plan was to peel that sign off the pole like a banana and slide a new pole in or slide a new sign in on top of the existing structural pipe, right? And then make the sign quote more attractive because it's the sucker's like 60 years old
Right.
and probably lower. Um, the top cabinet is square. It's about 3 feet by 3 feet. You know, give the sign a haircut, whack that off, and make the top kind of squarish.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to go back to another part of this too. I would go to the city and I'd find out if there were permits pulled for this particular monument sign, this pole sign, and what kind of engineering was put in place for it.
Yep.
Maybe they have it, maybe they don't. But if they don't, the integrity of this pole could be already compromised. We don't know. And
Well,
so,
yeah, yeah, I thought about that. I don't think so personally, but my plan was to include an engineer stamp on the pole because the wind load may change. They're going to ask me to figure out what's on the in the footer, which is okay. I'm
yeah,
okay with doing that investigative work, right?
right,
And then caveating that in the proposal. You
right,
know, the replacement monument sign is going to be X dollars, assuming the pole is structurally sound,
right,
all that stuff. And if these any of these assumptions are not true, that may affect the cost,
right.
right?
And there's two prior art and science or pricing signs that I think would be good for someone to go back and look at. One was Mike Riley's project. It was a
Okay.
really tall, um, uh, I think there was two poles involved with this sign, and they were going to add an additional sign to the existing signs that were there. And
Ooh,
so he had to determine the actual depth of what they felt this pole was sent down into the concrete. So
yep,
they opened up an area on the side of it, cut a small hole, and they were able to drop in a weight with a line on it to determine how many feet it went down, and that satisfied the city. Now, again, I'd watch the actual session that he shared because of the details that he put into it. But the important part is that yes, we know the depth now, but what is going on below the surface of the concrete?
yeah,
My as someone in the city, my concern is okay, we're going to use something existing. You will need an engineering department to go ahead and verify and say, yes, we believe the footing is X
yeah,
feet deep. This is the strength of it. It'll be able to withstand that 90 plus mile an hour wind.
yeah. There was
Now,
there was I know some engineering firms that'll do that here in Indianapolis. There was another engineering firm at ISA that does nothing but sign engineering, and they're really good at probing you for data so
right,
that they can provide an engineering stamp, and they're licensed in all 50 states.
right. So
And it
that's
did,
perfect.
yeah, and it wasn't going to cost a lot of money either.
Okay. So now when I have that information, now I can go ahead and start to create whatever I want to have on the top and create a drawing that's specifically meant for that pole. If it's a 6-inch diameter pole, this is what we're going to have as far as the welding that we're going to do. If it needs to be certified, how to attach that in the new cabinet. But there's a lot of work that's involved with that.
Well,
as you can see.
I understand all that work from the individual task times 150 or 200 tasks.
Right.
What I'm trying to do is to get to hey, we think a sign like this with all of these assumptions is about
X. Okay.
right. And I don't know how to do that without going through the 100 tasks and asking, because I had a conversation with Calcine Wholesale today.
Yeah.
All they did was give me the 3 cabinet prices.
Okay.
That's useless to me.
Who do you have that you use now that can do this work for you?
I don't have anybody specifically.
Right,
That's
so
the problem.
You need somebody.
Yep.
You really do. Because if you get this work, if you do all the work and you assume things without knowing it can be done, you're going to get yourself into trouble.
I know.
So we talk about this all the time, that you need to create and develop these outside sources that you take any information that you might have, and then you go ahead and put it into their hands. They then can regurgitate back to you what the cost will be to complete that part of the project. Now you've got an idea of what said vendor can do for you, and then you don't stop with that vendor. You continue to look for another vendor and another vendor, another vendor. You work on your bench. But every state in the United States, the cost is going to be different. You know that already. That's the way it is. The competition in your area is going to be different in every area. So for me to come up and say something, well, it's going to be $35 a square foot. Well, that's like throwing a dart against the wall. You have to know all of these other elements to be able to price things, meaning the science of pricing signs. And then once you know what those numbers are, and you know this already, then you can get into the art side of it and dazzle with all the experience that you're going to bring to the table. And I think that when and if we bring Rob on, that's trying to join the party today, he's going to share in the very beginning, when he started his business, a combination of a monument sign with channel letters and how he went about the process.
Okay, that'll be helpful.
It will be helpful. That'll be good. But these other ones there's another one that Roger Carroll did a great job on, a very brand new monument that he had to do. That was, someone gave him an example of, and I really enjoyed that session because, Roger's very honest and straightforward. I didn't know anything about it, so we drove up to this other location and we got out of the car, and I handed my son-in-law a tape measure and a clipboard, and we looked. I don't even know if they put a hard hat on it, but they looked official, and they got into the monument and did all kinds of, unscrewing panels and things. Nobody stopped them. Somebody thinks they must know what they're doing because they're out there doing what they needed to do to determine what they needed. For him to go ahead and send that information off to Kevin Hull in Texas so he could quote what they had found out. Now, the information Roger got in the very beginning wasn't complete enough, so he had to find out more.
Okay.
And I think that we're going to really save ourselves a lot of time and trouble if we have a really good checklist that I think Sign Pack has put together for someone to follow through to make sure they check all the boxes of all the information they will need to be able to go ahead and provide you a drawing for you now to use that to send on to somebody to get a quote to do the work.
Right. Okay.
Okay. And Rob is here.
Rob, we've been talking about you.
Rob, you're on
You're on mute, buddy.
You're muted, but you're there. I see your smiling face. That's good.
My apologies.
Yay!
My apologies for being late.
That's all right.
went to a survey and got caught in traffic, and everything came to a standstill for about 20 minutes. So here I am, unfortunately.
Well, no, it's not unfortunately, it's fortunate that you're here. That's what we
I
want to.
appreciate that.
Yeah, right. Um, so I'll kick this off. We've already been talking about some other projects with regards to pole signs and sign bases and how to price things out. So we've got some information already started today, but we're going to jump onto you now. And I'll do a quick introduction. What I'd like to do too is everyone that's on board today, I'd like them to take a minute to have you introduce who you are to Rob, how long you've been in business, how many employees you have, just a quick, your elevator speech of who you are and where you are, and that sort of thing. So, Rob is from Quad City Custom Signs. You started your business, I said back in 2020, 2020. Is
Yeah,
that
it was,
right?
yeah, we opened doors the 1st of December 2020. So the very end of 2020.
Okay. So just coming out of, well, not really coming out of COVID, but in around that time.
That
So
was the intent. That was the intent.
all right. So, Rob, just a minute. I'll have you introduce what you have going on at your company. But Dan, we're going to jump around the board and have everybody say hi.
Okay, hi.
And
Oh,
Dan,
my name.
by the way, this is recorded if everybody wants to go back and watch this later.
I'm okay. I'm Dan Lucarelli. I own Indie Sign Factory. I've been in business for about 3.5 years. And my elevator pitch at BNI is big signs, little signs, signs that move on cars, and everything in between.
Very good. Lana, hi, how are you? Good to see you again.
Thank you, George. Lana from Diablo Signery, California, Silicon Valley. Got my studio last October in the process of hiring and learning every single day from the community and from practice.
Very good. Okay,
Awesome.
thank you. How about Matthew? There he is.
Hello, Rob. Hello, everybody. Matthew Sirachi and collaborative sign and design with my wife, Pepper Chambers. We are in Gilbert, Chandler, Arizona. We just started a virtual model, and we don't have any employees, but we do have a 1099 virtual assistant.
Very good. Thanks, Matthew. Good to see you again. Donna and Richard, looks like you're on the road again.
Yes, we are. So Richard and Donna Watkins, we are Circle City Custom Signs in Indianapolis of mid-February of this year.
Very good.
And 2 employees now.
All right. Very good. Thank you for checking in. Alex, good to see you're on board today too.
Thank you. Good seeing everyone. Hello, Alex Tresnick. I'm in the process of opening. I'm in northeastern New Jersey.
Right. Very good. Good to see you. And Allie, if you can come off of mute and say hi. Or
Not.
going once, going twice. Allie, you there? She might be just listening in today. All right. Well, maybe if she comes on in a few minutes, we'll have her say hi. But in the meantime, Rob, let's get after you. Give us a little history of you in your 5th year now, I'm going to guess, and what's going on at Quad City Custom Signs.
Thanks, George. Good morning, everybody. Again, apologies for being late. Yeah, so Quad City Custom Signs, I opened, as we mentioned, in December of 2020. At what point, well, I thought was going to be the end of COVID. I thought it was a really good time to start a small business. So, as we all know, that's not how it happened, but still managed to get started and kind of had a little bit of a churn on the first year, as much like everybody else in the first year in that time frame. But started with me and one employee, a designer slash sign maker, somebody that was pretty experienced on the vinyl side, but not outside of that. We didn't start in a retail space. So unlike I'll say the recommendation, we actually couldn't find a good space that had garage space or workspace. So a lot of our panel cutting and that kind of stuff was done in a big office. So we stayed there for 2 years, knowing full well we wanted to move. So we then moved into a roughly 5,000 square foot facility that we're in now. So we've got about 2,000 square feet of office, 3,000 square feet of, I'll say, warehouse slash garage space. We got a couple of overhead doors, no dock, but a couple of overhead doors. In terms of equipment, I am still on the standard package. So I've got a 365 Graphtec plotter and a laminator, right? We recently are trying to work a business partnership with a local printer that does some large format stuff, but they also have a large CNC and a flatbed printer that we're going to have access to. So that's kind of some growth opportunity in terms of products for us, stuff that we don't make in house. We do have a bucket truck that I bought last year. Completely changed my business. If anybody cares to hear about that, feel free to throw me an email. You guys know how to get a hold of me. I'd love to tell you about the value of a bucket truck and my reservations upon getting it and what it kind of turned out to be. Yeah, so right now I started with one person, hired my second person about 8 months in. We ended up hiring quite a few people at the end of last year, largely because I thought we were leaving a lot of opportunity on the table by not having people able to service customers and be able to get signs done in time. So right now it's me plus 8 other people. Just recently got my 8th back. She was out for several weeks. She had broken her arm, so she just recently got back. So it's a busy place. Obviously, you got quite a bit of overhead, but we're continuing to grow and look to continue expanding. So it's been a little bit of a roller coaster for the first several years, like anybody else. So if anybody tells you it's going to be a straight line, they're lying to you. But it's definitely been a really good experience and something I'm glad I've done. So
Good, very good. All right, so when I reached out to you to see if you'd be interested in doing this, you jumped right on and said, "Yeah, George, be glad to help out. Let me know when I can do it," and I'm glad you're here. The project that you have mentioned you want to talk about was early on, a monument with some channel letters. Is that the one you want to go ahead and
yeah,
tell us a little about?
yeah, I'm trying to get uploaded. I've got a zip file here that I was going to let the team kind of, we can dig through some of the projects as well. So I'm going to show it, and then I'm also going to try to get it up to you guys so you guys can kind of poke through it. And if you guys have any questions, you guys can look at it later in life as well. I'm going to put it in the chat now. There's a zip file in the chat for everybody. Anyhow, let me get that shared and I'll kind of walk through it. But the project we're going to show is a project we did for Nails 1. The specific project, we did some dual lit letters on the front of a building. And then we also did some panels for a monument sign, replace some panels. So early on, I really struggled with pricing for channel letters and especially for vended products and what's my market like? How do I find that price point? This project had a couple of different twists that I thought would be valuable. If I was, a couple of years in business, I really would have known this and probably had less headaches in life. So this is one that I would have liked to have seen and been able to talk through. Feel free as I kind of walk through this to ask questions, interrupt me. I'm pretty well known for getting on a soapbox and just keep rambling on. So feel free to let me know if you guys have questions. So I'm going to go throw a couple of images up while I'm talking. The first one's going to be just kind of the panel signs here. Pretty standard.
Just to interrupt real quick, how did this job come your way?
Yep. No, I'll get to that. So they found us because we had basically through a referral. We had just recently done a different nails location, and I didn't realize it, but a lot of these folks are related that are opening these. So this one is roughly 20 miles away from the first one we did. And he was just opening it, new business owner, didn't know really what he wanted. So we actually went to the space, did a survey, kind of walked him through his lease to figure out what was available, what was allowed, and what wasn't allowed. And kind of worked him through the permit process on that. So what do we do from a site visit perspective? We measured you'll see again here in just a second. We measured the front of the building for the channel letters. We measured obviously the cabinet here sorry, I'm trying to get away from my control board so I can actually show you guys a different image. That is not helpful. Yeah, so
was that an
measured.
existing monument with one pole and 2 sign faces in it, or did
Yep,
you add
exactly.
something to it?
Nope,
Okay.
nope. There's just 2 sign faces in it. I apologize. I'm trying to move this thing so I can get out of here.
That's okay.
Technology's a bear sometimes.
No, it's usually I'm a little frantic because I came in here and I'm kind of worrying. So, as a monument is channel letters. So what I'm showing you are kind of the original ideas that we had given to the customer based on his input. And originally, you'll see these as face-lit letters and not necessarily dual-lit letters. And this was one of the pieces of when we went and talked to him originally. He kind of said, "Hey, I want signs like that," and pointed at a couple that were next door that were all face-lit letters. He kind of had a color scheme of white and red that he kind of wanted to stay with that was relatively simple. Interior wise, everything was white and pretty standard on the inside of his building, so there wasn't a lot of branding created yet. He knew he didn't want a big logo, he just wanted letters. And so this was our original, what we call a pre-proof. So our process usually starts at a survey. We're going to meet the customer. Preferably, we like to go to the customer's location. We don't want the customer to come to us, largely because we're just getting his input at that point. I'd much rather see the site, see where we're going to be hanging stuff, and potentially see any other challenges we might see with an installation or anything like that. So we're taking a measurement. Usually this is a salesperson and not a technical person for the most part. I've got one guy that does a lot of the external surveys along with me. We use a spike device quite a bit to do rough measurements for quotes and mock-ups and that kind of thing. If we can get a tape measure on it, we'll get a tape measure on it. But largely we're using a spike for anything that's more than 10 or 12 feet off the ground. And that has improved our production quite a bit in terms of being able to get a estimate turned around. We do generate pre-proof artwork for the customer on the front end without a deposit. We tried to do that without it and really couldn't get a lot of traction with customers. So what you're seeing now are some of the examples of what we're providing for a pre-proof for the customer, just to get an idea of, hey, here's what we think the size and scale looks like. But we'll also use the same images to send to our vendors to get quotes for, obviously with some descriptions on raceways, remote mount, that kind of thing as well. But we do find that valuable. So it's a little bit more overhead on the front end of the project than what we would typically see with other. I know you probably talk to other owners that don't do any artwork at all until they get a deposit. We weren't able to successfully be able to take that strategy and work with it. Yeah, so I guess so that's the channel letters. I showed the cabinet signs. So those are the two major pieces. I guess one of the other questions was, hey, the back and forth that really is the learning point for us here was because this customer didn't really know what they wanted on the front end, we probably didn't sell them hard enough on the advantages or disadvantages of the different types of channel letters. We wish we would have done it on the front end because I think this original mock-up would have looked a lot different had we had a much better discussion about the advantages or disadvantages of different types of channel letters. So what we proposed were face-lit letters on a raceway on the building with this scale. And you'll see later on what we ended up with was dual lit letters back and front with a little different color scheme than what we're seeing here due to some back and forth with the customer. And my takeaway really is for even anybody new is once you get the customer engaged, is try to limit the number of artwork revisions you're doing on the front end, unless it's completely different signage or a completely different product. Try to get them engaged with a deposit at some point pretty quickly after you've given them that first estimate. Get a deposit and then make your changes, whether it's color, whether it's a rough sizing, whether it's that kind of stuff, or else they will continue to do edits until you get exactly what you want. And then, sometimes they're not even going to buy that. So as soon as we can get them engaged with edits and revisions, we're asking for a deposit. Hey, we can do this, but we'd like to get a deposit, so we're committed to the project, and make sure that time is going to be valuable, and you're going to get your value out of that as well as the customer. So it also narrows down if they're paying for it up front. It also narrows down how many times they're going to go through revisions. You get a lot more feedback up front than if it's free to them and they're just giving pot shot edits back and forth. And anybody that's been in the business probably longer than 12 or 18 months has probably seen that and probably struggles with it to some degree. At least in the Midwest, we've had that same struggle. So with that,
Dan, you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question and an observation.
Good.
The observation is I really like the watermark that says Quad City Nails and Spas. I wish it was a little bit more prominent. So whenever they share this with a competitor to get a better price, the competitor may actually think a little bit. The second observation is I really like the text at the bottom. It's a really nice way of saying everything's copyright, guys. You can't use it somewhere else. Okay. The question that I have for you is why do you put measurements on a before you get a deposit?
Yep. So it's a really good question. And I'll say even in the last month, we've really challenged ourselves whether we should do that or not. We define our pre-proof as having two different customers. One of our customers is actually the end customer, right? And the other customer is actually our vendor or the sales guy that has to go out and get a quote. So in order to get a proper quote, we choose to keep the dimensions on there, so we're not having redundant documents going to different places.
So,
But again,
so
there's
are you
a
sending,
strategy that allows them to reproduce that quickly, right? So
are you sending this document to the vendor or are you sending the Illustrator file to the vendor?
for these specifically, I send him this.
Really?
Our vendor, I can send it to him and say, hey, here's the size of the letters. I need this on, in this case, for us, it would be, I need this on two separate raceways. Here's the raceway color. Here's the illumination. Here's the return color. And within 24 hours, I'm getting a quote back.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
ultimately, the guy I'm sending it to is a sales guy, not a designer. If I send him an AI file, I've got to wait a couple extra days for his designer to get it, open it up, and tell him
Okay.
the information. So
Okay.
yeah, so again, we've struggled with that. Hey, do we give our customers the scale or do we give them all the information? And we've narrowed down to it's a lot more efficient for us internally to keep one document that goes in several locations. That way,
Okay.
everybody is seeing the same thing and has the same expectation coming back out.
Okay. Got it.
And the other thing to comment too on this is you've already been able to determine, because of the allowable sign area, what would be allowable to be manufactured, or you've measured the height of other letters that are in the same center to see what they've been doing, because there's already a sign criteria, as you mentioned earlier, that you help your customer through to understand what they're allowed to have and not have.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so that definitely helps that out. We have a couple of, I'll say, return customers that do their own permitting, and they'll actually take this pre-proof and go get the permit well before we've even produced the signs, right? They're moving ahead of us. They'll get the permit at the same time we're getting a deposit from them. So they'll actually use this to go get permits, believe it or not. And some jurisdictions will allow them, if they own the building, to do that.
Okay. Good.
That wouldn't work for me to get a permit, but some jurisdictions will allow them to do that.
Very good.
Any other questions before I go on? I'm a long-winded guy, so feel free to jump in if you guys have questions. I want to also open up one other file because we're going to get into some of the margins, that kind of stuff. So, what we ended up providing again was facelit channel letters on a raceway. The other PDF, where's it go? Sorry, guys, I'm trying to get this control bar out of the way. So, and then we have these panels that are 177 polycarbonate with translucent panel or translucent vinyl on the front. There are two different panels. This is a two-sided sign. So there's two of these panels, the same size, same layout, everything else. What I'm going to bring up next is the kind of a breakdown of margin. So all of our vended goods, I say for channel letters and illuminated stuff, we mark up 65%. So our gross margin on those is roughly 40%. I would love to have it be a lot more than that, but it's not, unfortunately. We've tried several times to work through, so you guys will probably see this. This is let me know if this is too small for you guys on your end.
No, we can see it.
Can you?
Yep. It's kind of, we've lost a little bit on the left-hand side
Yep.
now.
Yep, I'll work on it here.
So does everyone on board understand what a dual lit channel letter is?
Great question, George. Thank you.
If you want to go ahead and describe that.
Yeah, so instead of the standard channel letter that might have a 3 or 5 inch return, this is a 5-inch return letter. And instead of that, there's a baffle in the middle that kind of creates an H cross section for the letters. And so you have lights on the front of that baffle that face forward. And then you also have LED lights on the back of that baffle that face backwards. So the back has a clear backing on it. The letter has a clear backing on it, so allow that light through the back. And on the front, you have a standard channel letter face.
And then they're typically mounted off of the surface to provide that halo effect at night. So it gives it more of a glorious looking channel letter as opposed to just a plain halo lit or just a plain front lit.
An
Correct, yeah.
angelic glow.
Yep.
There you go.
So in
Okay.
the documents, I included a kind of a snapshot of my core bridge margin analysis for this project. There was a small window graphic included as well, just a cut white vinyl graphic. But you can kind of see here, we've got sorry, I'm trying to bounce around so I can see it as well. So my dual lit channel letters here, I've got roughly a 40% margin on those, which is a 65% markup for those. We do I'm trying to think, the part underneath there is custom. It's our channel letter setup in here. We run these as quick products, so we can choose dual lit channel letters and core bridge, and it comes up with pretty much all the standard definitions. And then we go in and edit or add the detail for this specific project. We have set up the channel letters to be a custom field, and that allows us to do some other, I'll say, unique descriptions in the custom field, with the top level being dual lit channel letters at a core bridge. So we found that if we do something a little bit different, customer confusion increases quite a bit. So that's kind of what we've balanced back into, is allowing that and putting a little bit more description in the custom fields. Window graphic, monument replacement panel. So this all happens inside. We have a vendor relatively close by that we get our polycarbonate from. And again, polycarbonate's marked up roughly is marked up quite a bit more than the 65%. It's something we cut in-house. We're trimming out all the size. The polycarbonate, we have the translucent white vinyl, and we do a gloss on top of that, so we get a pretty good margin out of that vinyl product. Because we have, I'll say, a bucket truck, we've been able to install those ourselves for the most part. We have a graphic design fee. This goes on just about every project we have out. Some of them goes up and down depending on the complexity of the design we have. This one, I think we actually did probably less because of the referral that we got. And then also you'll see down below, because he was a referral, first time referral, we give a little bit of a discount to the project for referral work. What else on here? Yeah, permit acquisitions. We charge $450 to process the permit and then buy the permit. We vary that depending on the size of the project. So most of our standard projects, it's going to be $450 for that permit. Our cost of those permits runs anywhere from $50 to $75 or $100 in some cases, depending on the jurisdiction that's around here. So for instance, we've got 16 different jurisdictions that we'll work in within a 40 or 50 mile radius of us. So each of those processes varies quite a bit in terms of time and effort required, but also how much that fee actually is going to be. In some cases, we're specifically a sign permit, and other times we're just a modification of a building permit. And so those fees change dramatically depending on the jurisdiction. So you can kind of see as we kind of come down here, this is not a great project for us in terms of margin, because we gave up a little bit of margin, but we were able to take on quite a bit more work with that same customer later on, and also with the original customer. So I'm pretty happy with that. We were roughly 45% gross going out the door. Standard margins for these are somewhere in the 46 to 50 range for big channel letter sets for us. Obviously just the cabinet panel is quite a bit more, but you get less dollars on the front end. So that's the quote and the margin. Eventually, this is what we ended up with. But I kind of wanted to go back and talk through the back and forth that we had with this customer. We had quite a bit of effort in terms of designing going back and forth. So you kind of see what we started with. I'm going to kind of show a couple of images of stuff what it finished as, and kind of talk as I'm talking through what changes we had to make and what we had to work through with our customer there.
While you're bringing that up, I have a quick question for you.
Yep.
What did you find evolved from when you started the business to where you are now to create those margins that you're looking for? How did you find out what your competition was doing? I'm going to guess in the beginning, you didn't bill for a lot of those line items that you have today. Is that correct?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah. So early on, I'll be honest, the answer is we tried a lot of stuff and we kept track of what worked and what didn't work. And in some degree, we talked to a lot of local vendors saying, hey, what is this going for in the field? What are you guys seeing? And some of them are willing to have a good discussion with you because they want to help you as well, for the most part. We've got a local distributor that kind of supplies to everybody. Here in town, I'll say we had a Wensco, so it's very similar to Grimco. It's a little bit smaller version of Grimco. And it's here in town, we order by 4 o'clock and it's usually in our shop by 10:30 the next morning for anything that they have in their inventory. So we've got pretty good friends with them, but obviously they are talking to everybody in the business and everybody around here that's our competitor they're talking to. And so there's a lot of that chat that goes around. What should we be marking these up? What does it cost? And we tried it. Originally, we really tried hard to get 100% margin on everything we did. I'm sorry, 100% markup. So a 50% margin on everything we did. And that just wasn't the case for a lot of the stuff that we're vending out. We couldn't make that sit with our market. And so we were down at 50% markup, and then we kind of figured out we were winning too much and we had way too much overhead in those projects to be able to make that work. And so we landed on the 65. That seems to be a good balance where if we're consistently doing those projects, we're able to make good money and cover our overhead as well as get some profit out of them. And they're usually a larger dollar figure project. So the margin dollars are good for us. As long as we're not the only thing we're doing. I would say I was probably 2 or 2.5 years in until I really felt comfortable with electrical signage pricing, if that makes sense.
Right. Go ahead, Dan, you have a question.
Rob, on that margin analysis, that was about 44% for the project. Is that correct? Not the channel letters?
Yeah, was it 44 or 46? Yeah, it was somewhere in that general range though, yeah.
Okay, so the project included some components which included channel ladders, which were okay margin, and then some panels which were much higher margin. Have
Yep.
you analyzed this by pulling the panels out to see just what the margin is on the channel letter portion?
Oh yeah, you can see that. You can see that on that sheet that I showed you.
No, but I'm thinking the channel letter portion is the channel letters, the design, the permits, the installation. Okay.
Yep.
And then just pull the polycarbonate panels out. I think you're lower than 46% for the channel letter stuff.
For the channel letters alone, probably.
Okay.
Yeah. So we also gave a discount here that's factored in there that we normally wouldn't. If it's not a referral project, we wouldn't have done that.
Okay.
But there are some other, I'll say, factors in here. I'm to be honest with you, as we leave, the percentage is probably not where I want it, but at $4,000 gross dollars on the amount of effort that we had in this project I was pretty happy with that.
Yeah.
Our installation, we had a pretty good. We had an effort of what we roughly cost of $1,000. We probably had closer to $700 or $600 in actual effort of installing it. Installation went really quick for us. We didn't run into nearly as many issues that we normally run into in walls and that kind of stuff. So
looks like the final thing was without a raceway because of the backlit.
Correct. Yep.
And you still had less effort than putting raceways in. Nice.
Yeah. No, it went really well, knock on wood. But I was really happy with this project. The customer loved the output. I'll say the challenge was really the design process and getting that customer to give us all the feedback initially. And like I said, in hindsight, it was probably a little bit more, we probably could have done a little bit more of the learning on the front end to the customer, and being a solutions provider instead of just receiving that order from the customer. We should have been a little bit more proactive in teaching him the benefits of different types of illuminated signage. But saying that, I think he's pretty happy with it.
In this picture here, there's a lot that you have going on. You've got the truck out front. You've got your support truck with your bucket truck. You've got a ladder that's leading up underneath probably an access panel for your installer to be able to climb up in there and connect things. These are all helpful for new owners to understand even that part of the installation, because when you go out and you do your site survey, it isn't just measuring the building, the location, the elevation, but how am I going to be able to hook this up? Do I need to go over a parapet wall to see if there's a connection on the other side of that? So if you want to explain a little bit about how you talked earlier about your salesmen doing some of this stuff and what they're capable of, but do you have like a checklist that you use at all to make sure you've covered every aspect of this, or is it just tribal knowledge?
No. Admittedly, some of it started as tribal knowledge, especially as it was somebody other than me. It became no, we have to have a process, and we're building that process. I would say we're continually building that process, right? And we kind of laugh inside of, as soon as we get the process done, we hire 2 more people and that process changes. But that's kind of I hate to say, but that's kind of part of what I'm learning is part of the business ownership and kind of being an owner as opposed to being the functional person, is building those processes so somebody else can be successful doing it as well.
Right.
The picture you're mentioning, George, the ladder, the scuttle was right there where that ladder is, so we can get in behind the letters to route the letters and get the power supply and hook up to electric in the backside. Our trucks, we don't have a trailer, is usually why we have a truck in a bucket. Usually these guys are dropping off letters for the guy in the bucket. The guy in the bucket is doing the letter installation, and then he's also doing on the backside doing the electrical wiring and that kind of stuff. If we can, usually the guys in the support truck are dropping off letters and they're going to their next installation. Is the best case scenario. In some cases where we might need 2 hands, or putting up blocking or something else in the back there, we'll have that. But that's usually done on the site survey. The person taking the site survey is noting where is access, is it questionable, is it not questionable? What is what size is that wall? What other things are on the front? So in this case, we had really good access to the front of that wall, as you guys can see with the picture. The scuttle access was right there in front of the main door. So we had to let them know, hey, we're going to be in front of this door for a while. Just let your customers know as they're coming in or as they're leaving that there's going to be a little bit of stuff that they need to walk around. So I don't want to move that ladder. If I've got somebody up in that scuttle, I don't want to move that ladder for him in case he has to get out in a hurry for some reason. I want that access point I want that, that egress point to still be there for them. In this case, I guess I'm thinking out loud here a little bit, but in this case, we probably had 2 people on site just because it's in the middle of a parking lot in front of the door. We probably had somebody kind of manning those spaces while the truck can have access to the face. And probably that second person's doing the cabinet while the other person's doing the channel letters in this case.
Right.
Okay. Sorry. Sure. I'm not sure if you guys can see do you guys see how the panel signs or the cabinet panels ended up? I'm not sure what you guys are seeing.
We see the nails one and spa right now, and it looks like an angled shot taken probably from the bucket when after it's been installed.
Let me see if I can try to figure out. We got 10 minutes left here. We've kind of gone through some of the margin stuff. We've gone through kind of the installation, and I want to make sure that I kind of hit on the making sure you're informing your customer. I kind of see ourselves as problems. So, we're solving problems for our customers, not just selling a product. This guy specifically wanted to be known or wanted to be seen from the road. The road is about 90 or 100 feet away. So getting something large and something that was going to be bright for him was important for him. You can see he ended up going with white faces and white halo lit is really what he preferred as opposed to the red face lit only. And like I said, he loved the output. In fact, he called us and we're doing some interior stuff for him as he's open now and seeing how his business flows through. He sees a couple of other opportunities to put some branding on the inside of his building now. So it's been a good relationship for us. Not only with him, but who we got the referral to has been a return customer as well. Normally, I wouldn't suggest going to nails and spas as good customers, but knock on wood, both of these were good customers, good projects, and they've paid on time without too much headache. So it's been really good.
And the other thing you find too is that when you've done a project like that in a center, all these owners or operators, managers of these different buildings in that center talk to each other, and so what you'll find is they'll come by and say, "Hey, who did your sign?" Well, Quad City Custom Signs did, and you know, give Rob a call. It was great to work with, that sort of thing, and you end up getting referrals and other work from other businesses that you may not have even had thought of before.
Any other questions? So you can kind of see the color, his color of the branding changed quite a bit too from the red that we originally started with. He ended up going with
Yes.
a more neutral tan color as well. So that was part of the back and forth of the designs that he was going through.
Yeah. It looks great. Looks like a nice project.
How, I guess while we're still here, is there anything else that you guys have questions about, even if it's not about my project, I can give you an alternative perspective on?
I have a question. When you do the estimate, do you add a particular amount to cover the errors? So, for example, something bad happened down the road, and that amount will help you at least to cover, if not all, but some. So, basically, do you have a margin for error, and how do you calculate it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I struggled with that originally, is how do you prepare for errors, and how do you estimate that, and how do you explain that in a pricing perspective? What I ended up doing is, and I still do it to some degree now, is I took the first year after I was in business for a year. I said, hey, we got to figure this out somehow. I took all of my expenses and really rolled it up into overhead. And so now it's overhead, and now we've even got it down to overhead by type of project. So I can say, hey, an illuminated project, we can usually have, 60% margin. If we're adding 65% margin, does that 65% margin going to account for what we expect to be at a gross, what that ends up looking like? So the overhead associated to electrical signage includes some of the error as we go through the year. Now I try to do about every 6 months, we'll go back through and make sure that that rate makes sense. I think as we've gotten larger, I think we've probably had more number of, I'll say, errors or things that, hey, we had 4 hours for the installation. At hour 2.5, the guys had to leave and go to Lowe's for half an hour to pick up whatever screws we didn't have the first, right? So you end up having 6 hours instead of 4 hours, right? Those types of things we go through with the team on a semi-regular basis of what did you do? How did we do it? How can we get better? And then some of it is just we accept that there's going to be variables. My opinion, installation is probably one of the hardest things in the sign business, in my opinion. Outside of trying to do some of the pricing and starting the business, the actual operation side, I think the installation is the hardest thing to do. But I give them some leeway. Ultimately, it's you got to make the best decision. If that decision is, hey, it's going to be worth this extra half an hour to go get whatever we got to get to make sure it gets done, I'm willing to absorb that. But I always tell them if you see that same thing happen 2 or 3 times, we should probably put it on the truck, right?
Yeah.
At some point, I'm done paying for. We don't have X. At some point, it makes more sense for me just to buy X and keep it on the truck, and make it part of the inventory that goes with the truck or goes with the installation package. So to answer your question, I roll it up into overhead, and we try to do overhead by sign type. It's like project type as best we can. I'll say as we've gotten a little bit older and a lot more people, we probably have more, the number of errors kind of goes up just by the number of projects we're doing. But the types of errors and the impact of those errors has become much smaller, if that makes sense. And I see the team quite a bit talking to each other about, hey, I just did this. Don't do it like that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So they're able to share their experiences, and it's not me driving it, is probably what I'm most proud of, is they're doing it on their own, knowing that, the bonuses and the pay raises and stuff are all associated to that, and they kind of understand that as well. So
Very good.
not sure if that directly answers your question, because it does get a little bit complex, but it's a variable of cost. It's a cost hole that you got to try to cover somehow, right?
Thank you.
Exactly right. Very good. Anyone else have any questions?
Just
Donna.
a real quick question. So the pylon sign made me think about it. So we're getting ready to do our first replacement, I guess, on the pylons. the marquee, whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
So we just ordered translucent matte white vinyl with a clear gloss overlayment on a white poly carbonate. Is that is that the direction we should be going, or should we be doing cut vinyl in each of the different colors?
There's two different schools of thought, and I guess I'll step in, let somebody else challenge me. Or we've done anything with color if it's not a standard color. So we do have some translucent vinyl in a color that we can cut. For example, the nails in the spa, we do not have that color. I don't know if that's actually a color we can order. So that is a printed product, as we see there, with a matte, with a gloss laminate over top of it. I can probably count on two hands how many that we've been able to cut and apply, just because of the colors and the alignment to brand colors.
Yeah.
Saying that, there are some differences in the quality of the colors that you get out of the different products. If you can cut it, I would highly recommend trying to cut it. It is very difficult to match colors with that. I guess I'll leave it at that. I'm not sure if anybody else has an opinion or experience there.
There is standard, as Rob is mentioning right now, there are standard translucent colors that you can buy. Green, red, yellow, blue, standard colors. If you can I don't say get away with it, but if you can actually find that that's what the customer's looking for, they just want a red or they just want a blue, cutting that vinyl is an easier, better way to go, because you're not printing an entire flooding an area and then reverse cutting out and adding laminate too on top of it. The translucent by itself is a good product. There's many ways to do signs, and you could have a clear acrylic or a clear polycarb that you're doing a second surface on. That's going to have different variations of different colors on it, so you can layer those translucents and still cover it with a blockout material. So there's not, I think by learning by doing and by extracting sign panels out of sign faces is a really good way to go to see how someone else has done it, and that'll help you decide on your own the best way to go. But I don't think there's one way you only can do it. There's a lot of options to that.
Okay, thank you.
Because
Okay.
the
Dan?
sign and that has been done both ways.
Yeah.
Some
Okay.
of them's direct printed, some of them's cut vinyl.
And that's what you're going to find, is that the original monument that might have been put up there, everybody's made changes to it. They're all different now because
They're all different.
they all do things different. Where if there's a criteria that's in place that specifically states that's how they have to be done, then they have more uniformity to them. But I take people out on our on the job training, and we'll actually take a look at how this has happened in other monument signs. And these are cut out aluminum panels with translucent vinyl, and some of the panels are white, other ones are off white, and the faces have been cut. I mean, there's just and this is what we learn in the business, is what's the best practice in your organization, how you want to go about doing it, and what kind of a quality product are you going to provide for your customer that's not going to look less than, but better, and maybe even lasting longer. I think is a good way to show your professionalism. Dan, you have a comment?
The more observant you can be whenever you're out on a site survey, the more notes that you can take, the better off you'll be. It may take you an extra 20 or 25 minutes, but those 20 or 25 minutes will pay off multiple fold the next time that you have to do, and you have to learn. Okay. On pylon panels, George is right. You can do it 16 different ways or 18 different ways. Find one that works for you and standardize on it. We like clear polycarbonate with translucent vinyl and non-cutting, because we can apply it very quickly and get it done very quickly. Some folks may want cut vinyl with their brand colors.
Yeah.
Print the brand colors, use the printer for what it's worth, okay, and match the color, and then just use regular vinyl and cut it out.
What I
Yeah.
like to tell people is exactly what Dan's saying, and Rob shared too, is that the more you know, the more you'll grow. So go out there, look at those signs, pull them apart, take a look at them, try to figure out how someone else did something, and then you'll be able to build upon that, because this is a great business from that standpoint. You're not stuck in that same
You know,
groove.
and if you're an ask for forgiveness rather than permission kind of person, there is an astonishing amount that you can get away with if you have a $20 white hard hat with sign company on the front.
It is.
And make sure it's somebody else's sign company in case you
No,
do
no,
something
Well,
wrong.
there you go.
No.
Just in case you do something wrong, that's all.
No,
Not
when you're printing black, print SIGN space CO period, and that's what you put on the front.
Yeah,
Guess
thank you.
only-
That's why we went out there and put our hands on the signs. We checked it out. We seen that some were cut, some were vinyl, translucent, and others were direct print. And I was like, all right, this is,
Yeah, and
Big
that's
question.
what the real issue is, what are you guys comfortable doing?
right.
Okay, now listen up, guys. We've reached the top of the hour. Rob, thank you so much for sharing your project today, what you did, what you learned, and your continued success, and especially in the installation arena, because a lot of companies need that kind of help for sure. And as I mentioned earlier in the talk, if you want to go back, something that you may have missed that Rob shared today, go back and you can review this. It's going to be in the library, along with other ones that other owners have done for us. And I really appreciate this forum. It's terrific. I think it's a big help. And I learn something every time. And so again, thanks for your time, Rob, and everyone else here. And I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care, sell some signs, and to your continued success.
Good luck, everybody.
Okay.
Stay
Thanks,
well,
Rob.
thanks, Rob.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, bye-bye.